Well, in a day that's already a little different, it's going to stay a little different. But I want to take just a moment. We started a series last week called Rewiring Church. And the gist of it, if you weren't with us last week, is this. If you buy an older house or an older building and you begin to make some changes, one of the things you find is you have to often do things to bring it up to code. And what code is, building code, is basically that for the present day's needs, whether they're safety needs or whether they're needs as far as types of equipment and things we have, the way that a house was plumbed or wired maybe 50, 80 years ago isn't as effective or as safe as some of the newer ways. And interestingly, that's true in a lot of areas of our life, but it's not so true sometimes in church. We have a tendency to do what we've always done, and so this is a very different series, and it's very interactive. I'm asking you guys to be part of this. I'm not going to stand up here for 5 or 6 Sundays in a row and give all the answers that I think are the correct ones. I want us as a family, as the church. We've talked about the fact that church is a who, not a where or a what. I want us as a church to come to some answers that say this is who we need to be. And who that is, I am very open-minded about. That may mean there's things that we do now that we decide aren't things we want to continue doing. That may be that we do things now that we think are beautiful and important things and we're going to do them better. And it may mean that there's some things we aren't doing now that we decide to do. The point is, for us to set church in stone when our job is to reach a culture around us that is changing faster than at any time makes us ineffective. And so I want to just quickly, and if you guys don't mind just going to next to the last slide with the email address and all, I want to challenge you. No, I'm sorry. Go to there's one with 2 emails on it. I want to read you just a couple of the comments I got this week. I'm sorry, Lee, or Hannah, whoever, I can't see you in the light. Go back to, it's the one that has the 2 emails. Earlier during the week, I asked you last week to email questions, comments, ideas, and I got a couple this week I want to read. First of all, and these are questions, people saying, why is church like this, or why can't church be more like this? One is, when a member of the church is struggling or needs help, who do they reach out to? When a member of the church is just about giving up on God, who do they reach out to? Now, these aren't specifically questions about our church. This is much more of a what should a church be like and what are some of the shortcomings, what are some of the blind spots. Now, there's a second one that I received that said, what would it take to be able to really participate in a church when you honestly can't physically get to church? And what would it take to reach out to those of us who rely on TBN, for example, but long to truly be really in a church community? And I'm probably not the only one who is profoundly discouraged about this. This is great input. These are the kinds of questions we need. But I want to challenge you this week to do something else for me. And that is, there was a couple of other comments, but the questions and comments I got were almost exclusively from people who either go to church or like the one person that sent me the one talking about she wasn't physically able to go anymore. But they are church people. Now, here's the problem with that. 82% of Chattanooga aren't church people. 18% of Chattanooga goes to church, which means we've got 1,500 opportunities to minister to because that's how many churches there are roughly in Chattanooga, to minister to that 18%. And if the only input we get is from church people of what church should be like, guess what church will stay like? Yes, like it is. So I want to just challenge you. I posted a blog at the beginning of the week, and you can go to that last one, I'm sorry. You can go to our True Life Facebook page, which is the bottom one, facebook.com/the True Life Church. And on there you'll find, I'll write another one this week, it's called Rewiring Church. And it's an opportunity, basically it's in a nutshell, just a very short version of what I talked about Sunday. But here's what I'm challenging us to do, and that is to get our friends or people we know who either aren't church people or maybe used to be church people but got their feelings hurt or left for some other reason, maybe got a work schedule they couldn't. But I'm challenging us to get some perspective from people who aren't church people. Because the problem is what Virginia said. If the only input we get are from people that this is very comfortable and this is the norm, then we're going to stay like we are because this is very comfortable and this is the norm. And it's hard for me to take on the perspective of someone who doesn't attend church. But to someone who doesn't, there's quite often certain specific things that make them uncomfortable with it. So, and I'm going to next week talk about what I would have talked about today, and that is reevaluating everything. And I'm excited about that because that is the first step. In order to change, you need three things. You need a clear vision. You need a sense of urgency. In other words, you need to know that something needs changing, something isn't working. And you need a change coalition. You need a group of people who go, yes, this change needs to be made and we're going to do it. Now that coalition doesn't have to be the size of an army. That coalition was 120 people in the upper room. That coalition was 12 people that followed Jesus. That coalition was 300 and something that followed Gideon. But there has to be a group of people that go, we're going to make this happen because we believe it has to happen. So, I want us to honestly say, if today, if there had never been such a thing as church and we were deciding what a church should be, what should it be to reach our culture? That's the idea of this series. To go back and mine from the scriptures what Jesus said the church would be, because actually what Jesus said the church would be would work today. What we've become is not ever really what Jesus said the church should be. And when I say we, again, this is not, I love our church, but I'm talking about the church at large, the universal church. What it has become is largely nothing like the book of Acts when we look at the church. So how do we incorporate the principles there, but how do we incorporate them in a world which is changing at the speed of light? Now, there's something that I'm very excited about having the opportunity to do today, and I think it is a perfect way to point out something about the church that I think is a very healthy thing, but it's something we don't see a lot of. And that is, this is going to be a very bittersweet moment for me, so I'm asking you ahead of time to bear with me. But we are blessed today to have the opportunity to set forth or to ordain Mike and Ginger Wadle. And this is, I want to take you back to a story in Acts that there's a church called Antioch. It was the first church that ever sent out missionaries. It's the first church that the Gentiles, it's actually the first place believers were ever called Christians, was this church called Antioch. And when they first started learning about Jesus and first started becoming believers, the disciples and the people in Jerusalem who were the nucleus, the brain trust, I guess, the ones who had known Jesus and traveled with him, they sent a guy named Barnabas that was one of their key leaders. They sent him to Antioch to find out what was going on, to try to control it, not just control it, but to try to structure it and make sure that they understood who Jesus was and what they were supposed to do. So Barnabas went in as basically the leader of this church. He was placed in there. And he went and got a friend of his named Saul, who later became the Apostle Paul. And the two of them were these key leaders. And then something interesting happened. The church was together and praying. And the Holy Spirit said, separate for me Saul and Barnabas for the work I have for them. Now, this goes against what my experience most of the time has been with people who for whatever reason, go somewhere else to do ministry. It usually is, I'll tell you how this usually works. Nothing like Antioch. Usually it's someone who doesn't do anything at the church where they are, whether they don't have an opportunity or whether they're not willing or whether they don't agree with it. But the pastor and leadership fight like crazy to hang on to the people that are the most productive, that know the most Bible, that they struggle to hold on to the Sauls and Barnabases, and we send out the ones that are expendable. We send out the ones that can't really sing in tune. They ought to go somewhere else and sing. We send out the ones that, right? I mean, this is kind of what happens. But that is not the New Testament model. That church, the Holy Spirit said, give me key leaders, and I'm sending them out. These people have proven they can do it, but they've done something else. They've raised up people around them that can do it. So it was important to me, and I asked Mike if it would be okay to do it this way. It was important to he and I that everyone know that this is an extension of what we do. We are called to make disciples. We are called to make leaders. And I remember very well standing a little over 7 years ago on a stage at my old church, and my pastor doing this and saying, we are sending Danny and Debbie out we thought at that time to plant a church. It was later that same day that the phone call came about, I'd never even been inside this building. But that whole wheel started rolling. But I remember my pastor saying, if we are going to raise up leaders, we have to be willing to give them places to lead. Now, I admit to you, this is heartbreaking at a level for both of us, for all of you, because these are people we love very dearly. These are people that have helped us be where we are. But we also aren't sending them to somewhere across the ocean. They are going to remain part of our family. And here's what I hope this says to you, because this is the message I hope you can take from this. If I take my shoulder and put it to the wheel and I build God's ministry, and I build the ministry of for another person or for another church, God sees that. This was what I took 40 years to learn. When I became faithful to someone else's ministry, God gave me a platform. I had the gifts before that, but after 3 weeks, I'd get bored with it, want to do something else. And when I finally went, no matter what, I'm going to be there every week. I'm going to be committed. I'm going to do everything I can to make this ministry succeed. God went, now I can work with that. And that's what I believe have happened with Mike and Ginger. We have seen them. They have been here since my second week here. They were out of town my first week, or they would have been. They have been beside us. They have been friends to you. And it is a great honor and privilege we're going to have. And I'm going to end the service this way in just a second by bringing them forward. And I'm going to invite any of you that want to come down and lay hands on them, or you can pray for them where you are. We're not going to do anything that makes them uncomfortable. But I want to ordain them and set them forth, because I want them to go with the blessing of this house, with the connection of this house, with the knowledge that we are always going to be partners in ministry. We are always going to be beside them. They are always welcome back, or in anything we do. They may be parts of things. For crying out loud, Mike has directed every drama we've done. He may still get opportunities. They are still going to help us in media-related areas. But this is also the time for those that they've trained around them to say, now I've got to take a step forward. If you went back to my old church right now, the worship leader is a young man that I mentored. I met with him every Thursday. He played in the band. He came up through the youth band. It's a young man that when his opportunity came, he stepped forward. I am a person who, when my opportunity came, I had to take a step forward from where I was. And this is, for those of you that are part of their team and that are part of our team, this is a time to step forward, to say that the Lord may very well be creating a place for you. And this is what we are supposed to do. Jesus gave a great commission, and it went something like this: all authority is given to me, and so go into all the world and make disciples. What is disciples? The word we get discipline from. In other words, people that put themselves in alignment with you and do the things required. Those people, that is what we're called to do. And that is what I have watched happen in their lives. I've watched a faithfulness grow. I'll tell you one little quick story. And I'm not sure now, it's been 3 or 4 years ago, but Mike came to me and said, I'd like to start a Sunday school class. And I said something that somebody that didn't know me as well might have been a little offended by or whatever. I said, I think that's great, but I'm not propping it up and I'm not doing it. And I said that for a specific reason, because the one thing, and he and I had talked about that I wanted to see was, will he do it every week Will he get discouraged and give up, or will he say, I'm doing this? And if I'm the only one there, I remember years ago, Rick Stallings as a cell leader having a cell meeting with one guy for months because that's all he had, but he stayed faithful to it. And that's what I watched Mike do. And Mike committed himself to, I am going to do this. And we kept it in the bulletin stuff, but we never, you can, if you've been here, you know, we haven't stood up here and begged you to go. We haven't said you ought to be in Sunday school. You should feel guilty if you didn't. I said to him, you're going to have to build the class. You're going to have to do it in the lobby. You're going to have to talk to people. You're going to have to see about them. And that, because there's only so many things that need to be viewed as mine. And that wasn't another thing. But more than that, I wanted to see him take that step forward and go, I will own this. I will do this. And I will do this if Ginger and I are the only two that show up. And I've seen him do that. And I'm seeing God bless him now with an opportunity in ministry. So, we may not see them as often, but they are going to be part of our family. This is a success for our church. This is a victory. This is a man and woman that God is going to use to go to the next level and do the next thing. And he's going to do it because of the effect, partially because of the effect that we as a body have had on them. It's not just the effect they've had on us. They leave us healthier and stronger, but they also leave healthier and stronger. And I'm going to ask them to come forward. I'm going to give just a second if you guys want to say anything, and then we're going to pray with you to close. But I'm going to grab a microphone. If there is something, Mike or Ginger, you'd like to say, we certainly are, we want to hear it. So let me grab a microphone.